Hello and welcome to Folktales Then and Now podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Burrows, and I'm so pleased you can join me for this very first episode. In fact, the very first episode of my first podcast. Each week, I'll be diving into a wonderful old book of tales that I stumbled across during a post-hike coffee and cake stop at a beloved bookshop called Scarthins. This is in the Peak District in a little village called Cromford. And this is the idea. Each episode, I'll choose a story from the book. I'll read it in its entirety, but then I'll try and bring it to life by visiting the landscapes or the towns where each story is set, and then delve into the folklore behind it. Oh, it's here, down here. Oh, this is it. I was about to say it looks like a drain, but don't laugh, because that is a drain. And this is the actual well. Oh, wow. We'll be asking, do these legends still survive today? Are they still remembered in the land itself, or in the community, in local traditions, or in the way the stories are still told? They're beautiful. There's a lot of detail left in a lot of them. There's a beast there, look. And then you've got sort of the Celtic knotwork. Or if they've disappeared into obscurity and you only come across them in books like this. Inside the fragile pages of this book, because it's published in 1954, the stories are rooted in the towns and countryside of the East Midlands. And this was of particular interest to me. This is what really caught my eye, because living in Derbyshire, the East Midlands is where I've grown up. I've lived the majority of my life here and I've hiked extensively around here. So finding a book like this with legends and little tales, some famous, some I already know, and some not so much, really wanted to have a look at this. And I also bought it because I thought my mum would love it. I get my love of all things fairy tale, magical, mystical from my mum reading to me or making up her own story about magical going-ons in the woods and princesses and knights and things like that. And this little book, when I started reading through it, I just thought she'd love this. So a little bit about the book itself, though. The collection was written by Eric Swift, as far as I know. He was a historian and teacher with a passion for the East Midlands, especially Leicestershire, where he lived. The book, published in 1954, it's a small, delicate volume, slightly smaller than A5 size, and without a dust cover and a spine that feels like it could give way any minute, so I'm really taking care. The stories inside are the folk tales, so these have been passed down over the years and have been retold and reshaped over time. But at the heart of each one, the lessons, the morals, the sense of magic, that remains constant. So the podcast, over the next few episodes, will dive into a selection of the tales, but also I do promise that we'll spend some time celebrating the author and also the bookshop that I came across, because both of those are really worthy of a little bit more in-depth research. And they're also there to be thanked for inspiring me to do this podcast. And many of my hikes are inspired by going and finding something historical. And again, all credit to the author, Eric Swift. Thank you for inspiring me and for filling my hikes and quiet evenings with your words. That's the gist of the whole podcast. There will also be social media pages and a website blog. So when I'm outside visiting all these areas, then there'll be photographs, a bit of film, and a lot more information on each story and the folklore around it. Okay, grab a cuppa, a comfy chair, get your headphones on and head out for your walk, whatever you do while you listen to your podcast. But here's the first story of the series, and we're in the county of Leicestershire. The Griffin of Griffydam. The Prior of Bredon stood outside the monastery church and looked eastwards over the treetops. He could see a great heaving ocean of boughs below him, stretching far downhill, and then, 25 miles away, trembling a little on the horizon, the tiny stump of Buckminster on the farthest edge of the Shire. He could hear the rooks cawing in the trees below him and the chopping noise of the woodcutters who were felling oaks down in the woods. He crossed himself and thanked St Hardulf for his continued protection of the priory and for the prosperous villagers whose people worshipped in the church. But almost at once his peace was changed to anxiety when he heard hurried footsteps and a boy, flushed with hastening up the steep hillside, knelt at his feet. "Oh, father," cried the child, "come down and help us. A dreadful monster has come and we can get no water from our well." The prior did not wait even to fetch his cloak, but lifting the boy to his feet, followed him down the precipitous slope and along the lane to the village. Here he was met by a crowd of frightened peasant folk. They all spoke at once, and it was some time before the prior could gather what had happened. The little community always drew its water from a well in the middle of the village, a sort of shallow cave with a trough in the floor where clear, sweet water flowed, winter and summer, as indeed it does to this day. But this morning, when the first early riser had taken her buckets to fill them, she was terrified to see a huge beast coiled up before the well, twitching its pointed ears and licking its long-toothed jaws as she approached. She set down her buckets in a shocked surprise, and the beast uncoiled its scaly length and crawled towards her, snarling and hissing as it came. She rushed back into her house, screaming with fright, and neighbours crowded in to hear what she'd seen. They all went down to the well and saw the griffin with their own eyes, moving backwards and forwards in front of the opening, and at times thrusting its bristly head into the cave to drink noisily. All this was reported to the prior, who went to the well to see for himself. The whole village had assembled behind the holy man, and the butcher stepped forward and, standing about 20 feet from the monster, hurled his chopper full in its face. With a sharp, snapping movement, like a dog catching a stick that's been thrown to it, the griffin caught the chopper in its mouth and chewed it up, as if it had been a mutton bone, spitting out the blade as so much waste. The village boys now tried pelting the beast with stones, but he paid no attention to them and merely scratched his ear with his hind foot. The blacksmith pushed his way to the front of the awestruck crowd, leading a sturdy hound on a chain. The griffin's attention was aroused. It sank its head on its forepaws and faced the hound, which was now free of the chain and ready to attack. The crowd made encouraging noises to urge the dog on, and then held its breath. The prior uttered a prayer as the hound moved forward with a long, vibrant growl. The griffin did not move, but put back its pointed ears and half shut its eyes. The hound sprang forward. The griffin seized him in its powerful jaws and killed him almost at once. The horrified crowd drew back and gave up all hope of getting water from the well. The prior arranged that a wagon should fetch casks of water from the priory, but this tedious and difficult system meant that the precious water must only be used for drinking and cooking, and not a drop must be wasted. A state of enforced drought lasted for 3 unhappy days. Then, on the morning of the 4th day, there arrived, riding quietly on a well-managed piebald horse, a knight. He rode into the village and drew rein and called to a woman who stood sadly at her door. "Can you give me a cup of cold water?" She hesitated, but turned into her cottage and came back very carefully, carrying a small mug of water and walking so slowly as not to spill a drop. The knight thanked her, drank the water, and seeing that she wept, asked what was the matter. By now, other villagers had gathered around and soon learned the story of the griffin and the well and the cruel cutting off of the water supply. When they tired themselves with telling the story over and over again, the knight smiled kindly on them all. "Bring me a bow and 3 arrows," he said. They were a little surprised at this. They saw the strong steel sword at his side and the heavy battle axe on his saddlebow. Yet he asked for a bow and an arrow. But he'd given them hope, and it was not for them to question or argue. The blacksmith went home and returned with a strong pliant bow and a large selection of arrows which he spread out before the knight that he might choose. The villagers watched eagerly, the men running a critical eye over the stranger's powerful shoulders and feeling sure that he would at least prove a good shot, even if he failed to pierce the brute's scaly hide. The knight dismounted, and 2 or 3 boys jumped forward for the honour of holding the horse. He strode to within 30 yards of the well, where the griffin was now sitting up on its haunches, vaguely aware that a new weapon was to be used. The knight deliberately chose an arrow, inspected the point and the wings, and fitted it to the string. He drew the bowstring to his ear, his head turned sideways as he drew across his body. There was a moment of intense concentration. The griffin seemed to lean forward and open its jaws. Then there was a sharp, vibrant note, and the arrow flew straight into the monster's open mouth. It gave a queer, gasping yelp and leapt upwards, pawing the air wildly. Then, falling sideways, it struggled and lay still. The men rushed forward to make sure that the beast was dead, the boys to touch the pointed tail, while the women hastened for pails to draw water, released and free, to everyone once more. When they had recovered from their wonder and turned to thank the brave knight who had delivered them, he'd gone. He was mounted and away up the hill. They say that the griffin's skin is hung in Bredon Church and that every bride passes beneath it on her wedding day. At least there is a column in the church carved with the griffin's shape, and certainly Griffydam has its well of clear water, safe and free for all to drink. Okay, before we venture out into the wilds of Leicestershire and explore the area where our story is based, I'd like to look and explain about the folklore aspect of the story. You'll hear me flip between the words folklore and folk tales. They're not the same thing. Folklore is a wide-ranging term that includes the customs, traditions, superstitions, beliefs, even things like culture, crafts and clothing. And then folk tales, especially in this podcast, are the stories that are weaved around the folklore of either a region, a set of people, or maybe even an object. They start orally, they're passed down over generations, and then eventually in written form. But why do they create a story? Well, one of the reasons is to deliver morals and lessons and things like that, to preserve their culture, teach people how things were. They can be delivered in different ways. I mean, some of them are fantastical, like the griffin beast in this story. Some of them are just really funny and comical. Some of them are frightening, kind of ghost story-like. But they all generally are there to deliver some kind of message or moral. A good example of the difference between folk tales and the folklore is the tales of Robin Hood. Robin Hood is ingrained in Nottinghamshire's folklore now, but the folk tales around Robin Hood and his band of merry men, the main message is doing good deeds to those less fortunate. So first of all, they deliver a moral or a lesson. And does the Griffin of Griffydam have a moral? Is it just about good conquering evil? Because actually, I'm not sure the Griffin's particularly evil. But yeah, it's got a couple of lessons. Look after each other when you have, even if you've not got much. The first instance in that is the prior The villagers have asked for help. They can't get to water. They can't get anything. The priory donate water, even though they don't have masses. They donate what they can. In turn, the lady donates what she can to the knight. And despite having very little water themselves, she still does that good deed. And in turn, his good deed is to get rid of the griffin. But also, you see the villagers all banding together and still trying to get rid of this beast between themselves. And it's not just for their own families, it's for the whole community. And then I suppose one that you kind of really need to read into a bit is, if you are struggling, don't be afraid to ask for help. But the main attraction and the folklore aspect of this story, and what makes it exciting and fantastical, is the Griffin himself. In this book by Eric Swift, this collection of stories, he's chosen the version of the spelling Griffin. It can be spelled in different ways, simple en at the end, and various looks, I suppose, as well, depending on what country, what continent you're in. Each area has a different look about it. Basically, it's the body, tail and back legs of a lion, and then the head, wings and front legs have the talons of an eagle. Okay, so you have got the king of the beasts in the lion and the king of the skies. So it's no surprise that this is revered throughout the ages as a powerful and majestic creature. By the Middle Ages, it's commonly associated, though, with being a protector of treasures and prized possessions. In this story that we think is based in the Middle Ages, was it being malicious? You know, you could look at it because it was portrayed as drinking noisily from the well, giving a side eye to the villagers while he's doing it. But if his inherent nature is to be a protector of prized possessions, and he sees that the villagers, this is their prized possession, this is life form basically, and he just plops down, so I'm going to protect this, inadvertently creating havoc and misery to those it belonged to. It might just be a simple misunderstanding. Again, it's a story, it's a tale, you can read into it how you like, but I like to have a little bit of sympathy for him. But being this powerful and majestic symbol, you can see this throughout the world, really. There's huge corporations that have the griffin as their logo or corporate emblem, Vauxhall and Saab. Before it got bought out by what we know as HSBC Bank, there was a Midland Bank in the UK that had the golden griffin as its logo. But where else do they come up in the past and present? Where do griffins feature? The griffin appears in Persian poetry, Greek mythology, literature classics, I would say, such as Dante's Divine Comedy, the griffins dragging a chariot in Earthly Paradise, John Milton's Paradise Lost. Then you're coming into more modern times where board games and fantasy video games, Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, and then we have Gryffindor. There's various references in Harry Potter, all the series of books, to griffins here and there. But Gryffindor, the surname, the house name, is a variation on the French version of the Golden Griffin, Gryffindor. And then Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland features a griffin, and there's two similarities. One, the obvious, there's a griffin in there. It's spelt differently and is portrayed quite differently as well. He's quite overbearing and dismissive at first with the mock turtle and his interactions with that creature. But then in the end, he's quite helpful to Alice herself. But the other one, and I don't know how true this is because it's alleged to be the inspiration for this character, is a wooden misericord carving in Ripon Cathedral. Ripon Cathedral, doing a little bit of research on this now, looks fabulous. And these misericord carvings featured throughout the cathedral, various mythical creatures, pagan carvings, pagan symbolisms. But that brings us and ties us in nicely to when taking me out of the comfort of the studio and heading out on location, because as well as visiting the Griffy Well, we go to Bredon Priory Church because there is a carving of a griffin that is linked to this story. So, come with me for an adventure. We are heading to, first of all, there's two sites of interest within the story. The Bredon Priory, which is mentioned at the very beginning. So we're going to head there first. We're going to have a look and see what it's like now, because in the story is set in, we think, medieval times. It was originally an Iron Age fort before the priory was built. But also we're going to have a look at the Griffin carving. So the Griffin carving, it's not documented evidence that it's directly related to the story. Whether it's a monument to the legend or whether it's just something completely different, because it's part of an Anglo-Saxon collection of carvings, the biggest collection of carvings in the UK. But it still ties in with the story, and obviously Bredon Priory is pivotal in the story, our version of the story. We're driving in the very scenic route. We're going through Castle Donington because it's quite nice to get the view on your right-hand side of the priory on the hill. So it's called Bredon on the Hill. Google Maps would probably take you on a different route, a bit more direct, but not as scenic. So we've parked up in the car park. Doesn't look like a car park, it's just like a very large tarmacked area, but there's probably space for a dozen cars, and it's looking onto the adjoining field to the graveyard at the top of the hill where the church is. We'll head in and go and have a look at the carvings. I'm really excited to see these because I'm a bit of an ancient stone bothering history geek, so this is great for me. Okay, so as you walk up the path directly up from the gate on your right hand side, there will be a big door with a round wrought iron handle. And this is the entrance, we think. It's a bit heavy.
That is a heavy door, isn't it?
Oh, by the way, that other voice you hear, that's my producer, Mark. You'll hear him once in a while. We've tried to edit him out, but he just keeps popping back up. Oh, this is fantastic. So, we are in the entrance to the church itself. What do you call it?
It's like the foyer, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, we're really uneducated. Cozy. So there's lots of information boards, and there's a notice board. There is donation boxes for the restoration funds. Oh, so there's a QR code, how to follow the tour. But this is fantastic because it gives you the Anglo-Saxon sculptures, which is our main point of interest. Okay, so in front of you, where all the welcome signs are, is obviously the doors into the church. We're going to go and have a little look inside, and we will describe what we see, but also the main point of interest here are the carvings and the Griffin carving, specifically to the folk tale. So let's go and have a look. So we've gone through the doors, we've got our interactive guide, and we've walked through the thing that you see. Immediately you see a font on your right-hand side. How would you describe a church like this? Very calming, very peaceful. A whole host of, I would say, boxed-in wooden pews. So you have to open each end of the pew to get into them. It's all wooden, all dark wood. That's a coat of arms, isn't it? And again, there's a griffin featured on there 2 or 3 times, and the lion. So this will become apparent in a minute. I will take pictures, put all of these pictures on the social media pages, and obviously links to the Priory website so you can read about this rich history itself. There's a wonderful church. There's beautiful high stone arches on either side of the pews. There's a raised altar. There's a carved podium lower down, and the altar itself with the kneeling prayer pads and all the beautiful cloth. And amazing arch stained glass windows. There's an amazing wooden slatted ceiling, but in between each of the arches, on both sides, there are some of the Anglo-Saxon carvings. And on the north wall, so that's as you're walking in onto your left, I believe is where the griffin carving is. There's quite a lot more around, yeah. I think it's that up there.
Yeah.
So in between the second and third arch to your left-hand side, I think it's that. There's no wings on those, but there are beasts, aren't they?
Yes.
But it did say that it's the north wall near the altar, and the north wall is on the left as you're walking down the side, isn't it? Weirdly enough, Griffydam is actually south from Bredon Priory itself. So if you walk 4 miles south from the church, you're heading off to Griffydam.
I did wonder if we got the right wall, but one, the compass on the phone says it, and two, the power station, which is now defunct Ratcliffe-on-Soar, that is north from here.
Ah, got you. Yeah.
So that makes me think that is correct. That's got to be in the right direction. Wall. Yeah.
There's railings on the third and fourth arch on the left-hand side. There is tombs and family tombs, all beautifully carved in marble. So this is, I'm assuming, the Shirley family tomb. Oh, this could be the family who owned the land or who owned the church. It could
like
be
the royal box,
their private area.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to sit with the commoners, did they? The family, they had their own
peasants.
Private area, and then you've got the village peasants sat out in the... Yeah. Okay. So walk through the pew box. We're on the other side of the private family worship area, which is what it's technically called for now, according to me. Yeah, so there's a little collection of upright standing carvings as well. So these are probably the remainders of what was outside up until many years ago. I think in the early 1937, they started putting the Anglo-Saxon carvings, integrating them into the church. They blow my mind. They blow my mind how old they are. And these will have survived Viking rampaging as well. So these were done prior to the Vikings coming into England, around the late 700s AD.
So how many years we're talking then? If you're talking 700, 795, what's that? 1,300 years?
Yeah. 1,300 years ago. That's how old. And look, like you say, the beautiful, there's a lot of detail left in a lot of them. There's a beast there, look. And then you've got sort of the Celtic knotwork. On reflection and looking at all the carvings, I think the griffin, although there's lots of mythical beasts here, is actually quite elusive. There's 2 or 3 things that we could look at, or they could be mistaken. Have they got wings? Have they got a lion's face? Very elusive. A word of advice when you get to Bottom Road in Griffydam, which is where the well is situated. Please don't drive down this road. It's very, very narrow and it's a dead end with literally nowhere to turn around. So please park up nearby and do what we did and use your legs. Oh, it's here. Down here. Oh, this is it. I was about to say it looks like a drain, but don't laugh, because that is a drain. And this is the actual well. Oh, fantastic. Oh, wow. It was also considered, I think, or it's on a list of holy wells of Leicestershire. I read somewhere as part of my research. So it is actually steeped in history. Don't drive up here because there's nowhere to turn around at the end. So on foot, and it's not took more than 5 minutes from where we've parked. Relatively accessible to a point. It's a road, so it's, you know, tarmacked. Then there's a little gateway and a green public footpath sign that says public footpath to the Griffy Well, and it's in between, so it's like a creamy coloured fence with like a disability handrail thing, looks like it, and it's in between that and the private driveway gate post. It's quite narrow at this point. It stops being tarmac road, it's like a little gravelly path. So as we walk through here, on your left hand side on the wall that is next to the road, there's a lovely sign saying welcome to Griffid Well, and it gives you a bit of history via Worthington Parish Council, which is where Griffydam is. And Griffydam, it's got a population of around 300 people, something like 126 households. It's classed as a hamlet still. I'm assuming that obviously we've driven from Bredon Priory, and the journey in the folktale takes the prior and the young boy who went to get help from the priory. Between that, in the Middle Ages, I would have expected something like just hills, trees, forests, 4 miles of beautiful rural countryside.
Not an A road.
Not an A road, not housing estates, but it is still a beautiful little place, and from what I can tell, it's got a great sense of community. As you can imagine, it's a slightly more built up area than back when the folktale was first created. But either way, it's still celebrated, and this is what we are here to, you know, find out. Is the Griffin of Griffydam legend still alive and kicking, even in today's age? Yeah, it is. It's everywhere. We drove past the primary school on the way here, and they have a beautiful griffin as their school emblem. Maybe it is for protection, but over the well it's grated. So there is a drain opposite. As you walk past the sign on the wall, it's quite a steep incline downwards to the well itself. There's like a stone rockery that's built over it, but the well itself isn't a well that you'd imagine, a hole in the ground covered with a little roof top and a pail that you can wind down, that like you get in fairy tales. It's been built over, and there's a square gate across it for visualisation. We've also took photos of the actual area, but yeah, it doesn't look like a traditional hole in the ground well. You can see the water though. You can hear the trickling of the water. It's not huge. You can see the water. It's very shallow where we can see, so it obviously drains backwards into where we can't see and where we're not going to go. I would say about 7 or 8 inches deep, if that. Yeah, but it's worth looking at. Let me just get my torch, see if I can see which way it goes, whether it goes back or drains down to one side. Oh, this is rubbish.
Yeah, your iPhone torch isn't making much of an impact, is it? No,
but I can see the back, so it's only about 1/2 metre back in length. Then there's a stone wall, so as you're looking through the grate, there's 3 stone walls either side, and the water is below that. But there is an actual wall at the back, so the water is going to go. I'd describe it more as a stream. It's so clear. You really do have to get down and look properly. As I mentioned before, between here and Bredon Priory Church it would have just been woodland, fields, the odd settlement. The hamlet would have been a lot smaller than this. So yes, it probably would be a really big area, big enough for a big griffin, mythical beast, to lay around and guard. And when I say fiercely, like threateningly, the villagers would not have wanted to come around. The line drawing in the book does look like this, but don't forget the book and the drawings were done in the 1950s. Right. This will have been here. This will have been here for a couple of 100 years maybe. So this is why I'm saying you really do have to stretch your imagination and think how it would have been. Would it have been so accessible? The villagers just rocked up once in a while, or they might have done some form of protection. It's well worth a visit though.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this story and episode. I'd like to thank you for listening, and maybe I've even inspired you to get out and explore the roots or folktales and history of your own local area, because everywhere in the world has their own stories passed down through generations. Or I've helped you use your imagination. I know, AI makes us lazy, but for a little while you can have got out of your real life and the crazy world, and it's brought a bit of smile and magic into your life. If you've enjoyed it, please follow Folktales Then and Now on wherever you get your podcasts, like and share with those you know, and keep up to date on each episode. For more information and social media links, visit folktalespodcast.com. Folktales Then and Now is researched, written and presented by me, Vanessa Burrows. Sound design, production and editing by Mark Burrows. All content is my own unless otherwise identified and credited. Special thanks to Eric Swift, author of Folktales of the East Midlands, whose work inspired this podcast.